Because whatever you
Yeah,
do,
yeah,
make sure you have someone
hands on.
who can take care of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're up on. We're on. Hey, Linda, excuse me. I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm trying to do a couple of things. It is great seeing you today. Pastor Johnson, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice. I'm going to let you say hello to Meddy and Marty, and then I'm going to let them go so we can get on with
Good
the
morning,
show.
Pastor. Good morning, Maddie and Marty. Hi, good morning.
Okay,
Have a
so
great show.
I'm going to let you all go.
Yeah, have a good show.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. They help us to get this sound together. I don't know. I would not be able to do this without them.
Co-author Jason Hill at the University of Minnesota says there is national
Thank God for a team.
You got to have it.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. I'm going to let you all go.
Yep.
Okay, so let's get going,
All
everybody.
right.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me
Bye.
get this. Bye-bye. I've got
quarterbacks are the
this.
first 3 picks in the NFL draft.
Oh boy. Okay, Pastor Johnson, let me get going with this piece. How you doing today?
Lawrence won a national championship as a freshman.
I'm doing well.
You
What
know what?
about you, Sandy?
I am doing great. And I came across this story that is just ethically problematic to me, and I would like to have you on next week to talk about it with
and
2 or
North
3
Dakota
people.
State's Trey Lance headed to the 49ers.
You know, they
Okay.
have a human animal embryo. Did you see? Have you read about that?
No, I haven't read that yet.
Oh, yeah. I haven't wanted to see the picture because that's just a little bit too far out for me.
European Union
But,
regulators accuse Apple of antitrust violations.
I just that's problematic for me.
Selling digital content to use its in-house payment system, which charges a 30% commission on all subscription. Those fees are then passed on to the consumer.
A human and an animal? What are y'all doing?
Telling users about
What is
cheaper
this?
payment methods. I'm Tim McGuire, AP News.
I think what people do is
This is
just
8:20 a.m.
it's just
WCPT Willow Springs
ungodly.
and streaming worldwide. WCPT.
Well, as our grandmothers would say, they done gone too far now.
They done gone too far now, and as you remember my grandma Tippy, she said it just ain't natural. Just ain't natural. You know what? Those old folks knew something, okay?
Oh, yeah.
It
Oh,
just
yeah.
ain't natural. That's what she. Oh, woman. My great grandmother could neither read nor write, but she made some sense. She made some sense.
Wisdom.
All them old folks, they made some sense. And what we deal with right now, what do they say? We get weaker but wiser? I don't know if we got wiser because this is sick. I'm sorry. I'm not even apologizing. I think this is like, are you serious?
Southbound I-57, Tri-State. The ramp to the outbound Eisenhower.
Yeah.
That's not right.
That's traffic. I'm
So anyway, but I'm so always glad
The
to have
media's
you.
all over this cancel culture thing, but how are they missing the real cancel culture that's
And I'm always glad to be with you, Sandy.
Thank you so much.
Republicans just spent the last month trying to cancel
Okay.
any support to Americans who have lost their jobs because of the way that
Okay,
Trump
so let
handled
me
the
just
COVID
pull these
crisis.
pieces
The
and then we're going
Republicans
to
have
get
been
right
trying
to
to
it.
cancel
Oh, boy.
stimulus money or anything to the American
Oh,
people.
Vicky.
Radio program. Weekdays 11 a.m. to 2
Gosh.
on
It's one of these days. You know,
where facts matter.
this
There's a sudden
pandemic has turned us
disaster.
into
You can't get to the grocery
engineers.
store, or they're all out of food.
It certainly has.
Oh my gosh! So I was able to chase down an issue I had with my internet this morning. About 5:15, I said,
We're My
I got
Patriot
it.
Supply done.
1 minute away.
So I actually rejiggered it, and I said, okay, this is the issue
for up to
here.
25 years.
And it was like, oh,
trust us for the
girl, look,
disaster
I
survivor.
know I studied chemistry in
join
college,
us?
but my goodness.
Unlike other food companies,
That's
we
why I
don't
didn't go into
skimp on
chemical
calories.
engineering. I was like,
Our
this
meals
is
give you
not
more
for
than
me.
2,000 calories
Even
per
though,
Yes.
you know, musicians are mathematical. I mean, that's what we do, right?
Very true.
So they call
Very
it your
true.
30.
3 M's, math, music, and meds.
emergency food kit.
Yeah, because most of it, because I was pre-med, but ended up in music. Miss Flack talked about going into medicine, but she said just music, she loved it too much.
15.
So,
Yes.
but, you know, she got a scholarship to Howard at 13.
10.
Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Crazy.
WCPT.
Okay,
5.
should we come up, everybody?
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. Down in your soul is the power.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Friday, April 30th, 2021. And I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. If you want to text me at that number, you've got GWC Injury Lawyers to thank for that. And I want to hear from you today. We're going to be talking about Senator Tim Scott. And a lot of people are really talking about his response to President Biden, his assertion that America is no longer a racist nation. Now, mind you, Vice President Harris did agree with him. She said, but we do have a history you've got to consider now. But some other people, they sparked a debate, and I want to talk with you about that, of course, throughout the show. But we're going to be talking about these breakthrough cases in this COVID-19 pandemic. People who've been fully vaccinated are breaking through with COVID-19, full blown. So what's going on here? I bumped into a friend yesterday, and he was maskless, but we were in an enclosed space and in a lobby, in a residential lobby. And I said, "Well, where's your mask?" He said, "Well, I've been vaccinated." I said, "Whoa, no." And the older gentleman who was sitting on the sofa said, "I keep trying to tell you, son, a lot of people really, we don't understand what we're dealing with. And so we've got to talk about that. We've got to talk about that. These shots do not prevent you from getting COVID-19. They do not prevent its spread, its transmission. It mitigates the severity of the virus. And you've got to know that. So everybody, please meet up with I love them so much, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars. They're on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. So I want you to meet up with Africa. Love you, Africa. Emmy Award-winning Africa. Brilliant artist herself. Brian and Linda Smith Hall and Francis and Mark and Medi and Marnie and Chapearl and Raphael. Hey, Raphael, hey, sweetie, and Maddie, and so many. Shirley from Philadelphia, we cannot forget. And of course, on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. Please like and share. And everybody, Medi and Raphael and Maddie and Shirley from Philadelphia and Mark and everybody else who I've mentioned and more. Create some watch parties, everybody. Let's continue to spread the word about the show. So create watch parties. Don't just watch it by yourself. Just put it on your networks and let's put it out there. Let's do that. And of course, you can stream us on the WCPT Facebook page. So please go there as well. And the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. page. I thought I cheered with him. That's right. Okay, let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 53 degrees and cloudy, although it's nice and sunny right now. But in Chicago, blink and the weather can change. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 61 degrees, mostly sunny. The Dow closed up 239 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 31 points. The S&P 500 closed up 28 points. Wow, we had an active day in Major League Baseball. Today, the Royals are playing the Twins in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Yesterday, the White Sox shut down Detroit 11-0. And today, they'll be playing Cleveland. And then yesterday, the Cubs are successful. 9-3 over Atlanta, everybody. Tonight, they'll be playing the Reds. Wow, everybody. Senator Tim Scott's comments have fired a fiery debate on race. And now, Vice President Harris has weighed in. She says she does not believe that America is a racist nation either, but the racism of the past should not be ignored. She said, quote, "No, I do not think America is a racist country, but we also have to speak truth about the history of racism in our country and its existence today. I applaud the president for always having the ability and the courage, frankly, to speak truth about it." What do you think? Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts about it. And now there are 150 million reported coronavirus cases worldwide. Wow. It's been just 13 years into the 13 years. It feels like 13 years, 13 months into this pandemic. 150 million cases worldwide. Across the United States, however, Cities are reopening. New York City, for example, is primed to lift all restrictions on July 1st. That's just a couple of months away, everybody. Still, experts say more people need to get vaccinated in order to maintain safety. Indeed, roughly 30% of Americans have been vaccinated. Only 30%. If we look at the news, we would think, if you look at the commercials, you would think that a lot of people have been vaccinated, but that's an indicator that a lot of people have not been. So, something to think about, everybody. The police reform. The Justice Department is reportedly moving forward with plans to charge Derek Chauvin and his three fellow police officers, former Minneapolis police officers, with federal civil rights violations in connection with the killing of George Floyd last May. The reports of the possible federal indictments come a week after Chauvin was found guilty on 3 charges of murder related to Floyd's death. Senator Sanders keeps on fighting. He vows to fight for Medicare for All expansion that was left out of President Biden's American Families Plan. That's right. He made it clear yesterday that he will continue to pursue a sizable expansion of Medicare as part of the American Families Plan after President Joe Biden excluded the overwhelmingly popular idea from the $1.8 trillion proposal, which contains massive subsidies for the private insurance industry, everybody. Did you know that? That's what Delaware is. The corporation state, everybody. As coronavirus ravages India, wow, more than 200,000 people were infected. Yesterday, the Senate is urging, Senate Democrats specifically, urging U.S. pharmaceutical companies to share the vaccine tech. They are not doing it. Indeed, Bill Gates has said, don't do that. That is prohibiting, that is preventing these countries from developing these vaccines or these shots that could mitigate the severity of this virus, everybody. People are calling. They're calling this, just the way this is being handled in India, a crime against humanity. People are dying in massive, massive numbers. Now, let me just give you this news before we get the good news. Did you know that America is running low on chicken? Yeah. The fried chicken craze in America, according to this study, according to Bloomberg News, is causing the U.S. to run low on poultry because people are loving wings and these fried chicken sandwiches and on and on and on. Pastor Vicky, what are we going to do
Yes.
without our chicken? I just wait a minute. Yeah, I had to grab that as a headline. Yeah, I'm not funny. I love it. I love chicken. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Pastor Vicky Johnson, St. Thomas Lutheran Church. I know that was not the segue you were looking for, but hey.
No, it wasn't. But
No, you're like, oh,
you know, they say preachers and fried chicken go together. So yeah,
yes.
What are we going to do? We got
Yes.
fried chicken.
Yes, or baked. You know,
Or baked, or broiled,
it's
or
just
barbecued. Huh?
it's just a wonderful thing. It's beautiful, beautiful, it's beautiful. But in these crazy, ever-changing times, we do need some good news. That's why I like to open up the show with it, because I want people to be hopeful. I want them to be hopeful, and I want them to know that there is goodness on the other side of all of this madness in which we find ourselves trying to float above. Oh, what is the good news today, Pastor Vicky?
Yes, there is good news, and thank you for having me on today. At some point in your life, you have probably heard someone say, "Watch your mouth." And it was more than likely in response to you saying something that you had no business saying. It may have been a cuss word or something that was just outright mean. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Life and death are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat the fruit thereof." The Amplified Version of the Bible says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they who indulge in it shall eat the fruit of it." This proverb ties into an old Negro spiritual that says, "Lord, guide my tongue while I run this race, 'cause I don't want to run this race in vain." There is power in our spoken word. God spoke and the world and everything in it was formed. We speak and our worlds are formed. And listen, once you speak it out into the atmosphere, you cannot suck it back in. What we say can make people feel good or bad. It can be encouraging or debilitating. It can propel someone or prohibit. And this is not just for others, but it is also for what we speak unto ourselves. We can speak the word, and doors will be opened or shut. Since there is so much power in our words, practice only speaking for what you want and never for what you don't want. Watch your mouth and ask God to guide your tongue while you are on this race of life. What you say will come back to you. And if God is guiding your tongue, what comes back will not only be good for you, but it will also be good to you. And to me, that's good news.
Oh, I love that. Life and death, the power of
Yeah.
the tongue. Thank you for that. I needed that today. I needed that today. What did you
Yes.
say? You know, it's a funny thing. Before we go to, as we go to Dr. Deborah Holden, it seems that whenever you talk about what it is that you don't want, that's what you attract to
Yes.
yourself, Pastor.
Yes. And they say that's because our earth is on a negative pole. And so negative comes unto us more rapidly than that which is positive.
So how do we practice, just very quickly, getting out of that?
Well, we have to remind ourselves, well, first of all, we need to ask God to guide our tongues and to guide our thinking so that we can begin to work towards the things that we desire to happen in our lives. It's just like when you see snow outside, you say, oh, Lord, I hope I don't fall. Well, why don't you just say something to the effect that thank you, Lord, for guiding my feet so that I can make it successfully from my house to my car. We just always go to the negative. We've been trained that way.
Guide me, O thou, great Jehovah.
Great Jehovah.
Lead me through this barren land.
This barren land.
Oh, I am weak, but thou art mighty. Oh,
hold me with thy powerful hand.
Come on, girl.
Yes.
I do remember some of these things. And we don't sing those songs anymore, but we really should. We really, really should.
Yes.
Pastor Vicki Johnson, everybody, how can we hear you give your weekly word?
Well, I'm with St. Thomas Lutheran Church in Chicago. You can find us on Facebook, St. Thomas Chicago. We'd love to have you share with us. We
love Pastor Vicki Johnson. I must say, I'm so proud of her. She's one of the greatest singers that I've first heard. Someone who I just have always admired so much. And the beauty is, as we have seen her as I've grown up, she's like a big sister to me. To see her go into the ministry and to become a pastor of a church is just a magnificent, magnificent thing. And we're just so proud of you. And just thank you for being now you've become one of our spiritual leaders, one of our spiritual mothers. Love you so much, Pastor Vicki.
Love you, Santita.
Okay.
And you know why I'm laughing, right?
I know, because she never calls me Santita, but that's okay. It's all right. Love you, Pastor Vicki. Bless your heart.
Have a great show.
Thank you so much. Well, you started it off just right, everybody. Let's talk with Dr. Deborah Holden. We're going to have Dr. Marilyn Corder joining her at the bottom of the hour as we talk about COVID-19. And we are still in this pandemic, everybody. About 30% of Americans, or just under 30%, have received these shots. Indeed, the Washington Post headline, one of the headlines today is Biden has delivered vaccines. Now the hard part, getting people to take them. So you see all kinds of commercials. But, let me ask you about this, Dr. Deborah Holden. For example, in a what to me is like a short period of time, these are, when people read these stories, even as they pull them together, They have a lot of questions, and that's why you're here today. This year, California recorded 1,379 cases of coronavirus infection in people who were fully vaccinated. Now, that's between January 1st and April 21st. Now, that's 1/10 of the 1.4 million cases reported in California, but it is concerning. What are these breakthrough cases?
Breakthrough cases are cases that, where people have been fully vaccinated and they've contracted the virus anyway. And we know that that would be the case, right? And we know that we've had about 5,000 of them, roughly, in the U.S. And that's, look at the numbers. If you have a vaccine that's 95% effective, that means 5% of the time it's going to fail. Mm-hmm. And those are where breakthrough cases come from. And I still maintain for people, if you get this virus, you'd rather have it vaccinated than unvaccinated. The vaccine supports people, even if they contract COVID, they typically get a much milder case of COVID than they would have because their body already is primed with an immune response. But that's to be expected. That's what 95% effective is. 5% of the time, it ain't going to work.
But I think I wish we had you even on even bigger platforms sharing that, because that is not the lead. That lead is, and that should be a lead if that's being buried. So the Washington Post had an article yesterday where you had this beautiful family who had been fully vaccinated, and then they contracted COVID-19, and they were like, "What happened?" And you're hearing that from people, and I'm going to bring this up to Dr. Corder when she comes on at the bottom of the hour with you. I was in a residential lobby yesterday and bumped into someone I know, wonderful guy, and he was unmasked, but he lives in this particular building. So, okay. And I said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Where's your mask?" He said, "Oh, I've been vaccinated. I'm good." I said, "But you still need to wear the mask." And the older gentleman on the sofa said, "Son, I keep trying to tell you this." He said, and he said, "Son, I keep trying to tell you." I said, "You can still get it. You can still spread it." See, when you come to us and say something 95% or 94% effective means it's 5 or 6%, y'all are going to get it. Breakthrough cases, the fact is, Dr. Deb, people don't expect the breakthrough cases. They really, really don't. They think that I've gotten the shot or the shots, I'm all good. And you're not a broken record because you're letting people know that that's not the case. So
I know the hard pill for people to swallow, though, is because it's like a circular argument. And I do understand it, and I have some empathy for it. Because then people say, "Well, what's the point of getting the vaccine?" Mm-hmm. and my answer to that is, if we got enough people who got the vaccine, then it would cause a community shift. It would cause a population shift. See, the whole point is we're just trying to get the spread down low enough where we can kind of bring this thing to a halt. And we need all of those layers of protection to be able to do that. And masking and hand washing are probably the two most important things that people can do. And right on its heels is get vaccinated. And so in the absence of that,
No, because you said something yesterday, and you say a lot, you drop a lot of jewels, and I don't want anyone to miss what you say. You said it emphatically. You said, "Look, we started bringing down the case rates before we even got these vaccines." Please explain.
Yep.
How did that happen?
That was prevention. And again, multiple layers of prevention, and not just personal responsibility, but that played a big part in it. People masking, having mask mandates that people were actually honoring and states were enforcing, people practicing good hand hygiene, all of that governmental assistance and support that came out so that people had what they needed. Enhanced unemployment is not trivial, and I keep saying this. It was not a trivial factor in all of this. That was whatever your unemployment benefit was, plus an additional $600 a week. There were people who were bringing home more money with their enhanced unemployment than they were making when they were working. I mean, it was transformative because it allowed people to actually be able to shelter in place and to honor these admittedly very stringent public health recommendations. So having all of those things happening at the same time, having the mask mandate, people practicing personal responsibility, getting the governmental support, all of those things happening at the same time is how we flattened the curve in the first place. Remember, most of the other countries who got their rates down did it before they got the vaccine. Now that they have the vaccine, they've added that, and some of these countries are like almost at zero. Logging almost, some weeks no cases. And we're at record highs. Michigan looks like we're coming out of that big surge that we've been in. Our cases in my county dropped 41% this week. But boy, if you looked at us over the last month, we were almost back to where we were at the height of the pandemic. So we did what we did the first go round in the absence of a vaccine. The vaccine was supposed to be the game changer, the thing to tip the scales in our favor and get us out of this. But we messed up and stopped doing all the other things that we were doing that got us the rates down in the first place. So that's the mistake. The vaccine was supposed to be in addition to, not in lieu of.
You said you're sounding like Ken Frazier, the head of Merck. He said that last year. So, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what we can do to protect ourselves. Everybody, I don't want you to think that we're sounding like broken records, because that's not really what we're doing here. What we're trying to do is give you the information. Information is power. Knowledge is power. Then you've got to act on it. When you get your shots, if you don't get your shots, you need to mask. You need to practice hand hygiene. You need to boost your immune system. There is so much that you need to do. I'm not the doctor here. Dr. Deborah Verholden is Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, coming out of Johns Hopkins University. One of the most brilliant epidemiologists in the world today. What makes her so special is that she is trying to serve the people. You don't get people with these kinds of credentials talking to us every day, but we do on the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Marilyn Corder, professor of pediatrics at Howard University. Hey, School of Medicine. Love it.
15.
Can't wait to talk with her and talk about how we can protect our children. Everything's reopening,
10.
which means we're going to be more vulnerable. But that does not mean that we need to get sick.
5.
That we can be well, but we need to get the information so we can do that. I'm Santita Jackson. This is WCPT 820 AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Okay. Dr. Deb? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm looking for my glasses.
Girl, we could hear you say that. I said, this child, boy, she is sounding like you're going to do this to your grandbaby. Baby, get my glasses. Bring them right here, over here.
Yeah, can you pick one of my glasses, please?
Can you see that? I see that hand outstretched right now. Like, bring it right here. Bring it right here.
I surely cannot see without them. I don't know when it happened. I can't read anything without them. I cannot see close up without my reading glasses.
It's called 40. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. Because I'm ahead of the curve with my brothers. I'm like, when you turn 25, this is going to happen. Oh, no. I said, yes. Then they called. I said, you can't pull all-nighters anymore. You can't do it. Oh, no. Uh-huh. They said it's like a switch went off in our heads. And one of my brothers said, I don't know if it was the power of suggestion. I said, no, it's the body
Dr.
clock.
Corder.
What? But I can hear you. I can hear you looking for something in the background, so just be conscious of that. But Dr. Corder, how are you?
It's me. I'm Kevin. How are you?
Oh, I've got Dr. Deb on with you, Dr. Deborah Verholden.
Hi. Hey, good morning.
Hi, Dr. Corder.
Hello.
She's looking for her glasses this morning.
Oh, I know how that is. Oh, girl, find them glasses, honey.
I have baskets of them, and my mother just has them all stashed all over the house.
Oh yeah.
All over her house, their house, my parents' house. I mean, and my father just He's like, could you pass me my glasses? I'm like, okay. Which pocket are they in? I said, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to go out today and buy him some more, just some reading glasses, just so I can drop them all around the house. Just, hey,
That's right.
they're here.
That's right.
If I get you nice 10 pair, you don't have to worry about it, because it's a lot.
Exactly.
It's a lot.
I found a pair. We're talking today for. We're talking today with the my conversation and contribution is going to be what's going on in the state of affairs with children and COVID.
Please, that's what I wanted to ask you about that. And offline, I'm going to ask you. I need to call you today about someone in speech pathology at Howard.
I think it's a new person.
Well, I need to find a therapist. So I need to speak with you about that. And so I'll speak with you. I'll call you a little bit later. Okay. So that would be great. But everybody, we're going to talk about COVID and our children, maybe, to vaccinate, not to vaccinate, when, how, who, what should we be feeding our children? You know what I'm saying? What should we be feeding our children? Okay. Do you give your children the blackstrap molasses that my mother used to give me? Yes, it was dreadful, but it helped us. That Scott's emulsion, that cod liver oil, it was horrible. Thank goodness she figured out giving us some orange juice to chase it down. It was like, when we were walking out the door, she said, that spoon was coming out.
Back in 30.
I was like, this is the nastiest stuff in the history of stuff. I didn't start getting sick, really. I mean, I had my issues when I was growing up, but I didn't really start having respiratory issues until I went to college, because I was not doing the things that my mother did for me, and I really began to struggle. I really did. So, stand by, everybody.
5.
I think Mama does know best.
Absolutely.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. Down in your soul is the power.
Hey, everybody. The Power of Hope by Sounds of Blackness. Love it. The Santita Jackson Show, Friday, April 30th. Can you believe it's almost May? Oh, my goodness. Mother's Day is 1 week away. What have you bought for your mom? What have you brought to your mom? I think that's really the thing to do. Because what can you buy for your mom? You can't pay her back. Thank you, Shirley Caesar. That song, No Charge. You can never pay your mother back for all that she's given you. Your daddy either, quite frankly. So everybody, I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. We're watching, we're still in the midst of this pandemic, everybody. We're watching a real crisis in India. Our brothers and sisters in India are struggling under the weight. Hundreds of thousands of people are contracting COVID-19, a very severe strain, every single day. Thousands are dying every day. They're trying to find wood for the crematoria. It is a whole lot. And now we're seeing that, according to this Washington Post story, the headline is Biden has delivered the vaccines. He said he was going to get 100 million doses. Now he has 200 million in his 100 days. But guess what? According to this headline, now the hard part is getting people to take them. That's right. In fact, really just under 30% of Americans have been fully vaccinated. And now the demand is slowing. Maybe it's because of the rollout on the J&J vaccines, the 15 million that were contaminated, the 62 million other doses that are being investigated. Maybe it's the breakthrough cases. I mean, there's a whole lot, but I think you need to be empowered with some information. Maybe this is a great lesson for all of us. Dr. Deborah Verholten, Associate Dean of Michigan State, at Public Health at Michigan State, and Dr. Marilyn Corder, Professor of Pediatrics at Howard University Howard University School of Medicine. We need to start reading the fine print on all of our medicine. Most of us just pop a pill and don't think about it. That's not the thing to do, you guys. It's not. But we've got a lot of issues to look at with this vaccine, as we're about to send our Olympic team to Japan that has a vaccination rate of 1%, not even 1%. They're not getting vaccinated over there. They had an encounter with our measles and rubella vaccines 30 years ago, and they said, no, thank you. So it's very interesting that we're still pushing for the Olympics and we're going to a country that will not vaccinate at all. So let me go to, Dr. Deb, let's start with Dr. Corder, because she said she wants to start with the children. And I do that in the spirit of Dr. Deb, who's about to become a grandma. She's planning the shower right now. If you don't have a vaccine, you can't come. You can zoom in, all that stuff. I am not mad at her. She's protecting her baby to be. She is, and her baby who's already here, and I understand that. What about children? I mean, and what about pregnant women? And how do they protect themselves in the vaccines? Because this has been evolving the information.
Well, and thank you again for having me. What is interesting, I've been a pediatrician now for 42 years, and I am in private practice and do a lot of consulting with different entities about children's health. Now, of course, children's health starts with that pregnancy in terms of the baby in utero. So we want to make sure that the best outcome that we strive for, that we get. And of course, things that the pregnant mother is exposed to, be it viruses, infections, and trauma affects the baby. Now, here we are with COVID, and COVID truly has changed the whole, it's changed the landscape, even with you having a baby. In other words, women who are having babies, they may be there alone because of the restrictions. I know in 2 of the hospitals here, you by yourself with the team, your doctors, but that's supposed to be the most blessed, sacred occurrence in your life to have your mother, the baby's father, all the significant folks around you holding your hand, tapping your brow, push, push, push. Well, it's different. And they get you in and they get you out. You have the baby. You may ordinarily have stayed 2 or 3 days. The hospitals are like, no, you've got to get out of here because, we've got to socially distance. We have to get you out. Not to mention if you have a mother who has COVID. Now, all across the nation, everyone is tested prior to going into the hospital with COVID. They're tested. So there are some mothers who have COVID already, who are delivering. And the CDC will say, well, you can still breastfeed, but, I have concerns about that. Of course, I want every mother to breastfeed. That is the best milk. But in terms of handling, et cetera, and there are some babies, we thought we would not see vertical transmission, but we are seeing some children who come into the world, babies, who are positive for COVID. So is it passive COVID positivity, or is it, after the fact, after they're born? So let's get back to what we're saying and what we have said before and what we say currently about children with COVID in general, the daycare that are opening up. We know that when we follow this curve, when we follow all of this for 15 months now or so, children had either the mild symptoms or no symptoms. Children who are positive for COVID. And that makes it scary because they're walking around, I call it the walking around unknown, without symptoms. But remember what population we're talking about, children. So they're not going to be so vigilant in washing their hands. They're not going to keep the mask on. They're going to have runny noses. They're going to share everything, every body fluid from coughing, sneezing, runny nose to their friends and other relatives. So sometimes I call them the weapons of mass destruction because they have it and they don't realize, and we don't realize until they get very sick. We have had some cases, and they're very rare, but we've had some cases of the multi-symptomatic inflammatory disease, and that's when you must act fast. They must be hospitalized. They must have a special medicine called IgG because you only have a window of time of 4 to 5 days. So that's with a fever, inflammation everywhere in your body. We don't see that often, but we had 20 some cases here in the district at one hospital alone. So we want to make sure that we still stay vigilant and we protect ourselves, we protect our seniors, but we must protect our children. Every day I'm talking to my patients and we're doing COVID testing. These poor children, the norm is someone sticking something in your nose every 2 weeks or so, or someone aiming at you with a thermometer. But we want to make sure that we know the status because that child could be positive for 2 or 3 days or weeks, or at least a week, and have gone to grandma's house and have gone, as they're opening up things, have gone to Chuck E. Cheese and different places because now it's Mother's Day, as we mentioned. It's coming up. It's wonderful weather. And then we can have what I would call the second or third surge, and that would be horrible. Okay. So, so that's where we are. They're opening up schools, et cetera. And, we just have to make sure that if there's a suspicion of a patient, a child, a toddler, a elementary school, or even a teenager, they have to get tested. They look good because they're not symptomatic. They don't have the fever, the cough, etc., that us older people have, but they are still they're contagious. And we're talking respiratory, we're talking droplets, we're talking touching behind, and I don't know what's worse: the teenagers drinking after each other, sharing body fluids, otherwise, or the toddlers who just want to hug and kiss. So that's where I need to make sure that we all understand and we know that this is certainly something we're still in. As we heard, we know about the India, we know surges, some areas in our, places in our area even have some peaks in terms of increase. But we're looking now, we're seeing more and more children COVID positive, symptomatic and asymptomatic. Thank you.
No. And how can we hear you on WOL? The iconic radio. You got to push it every time because I love that. Look, I'm not a hater.
Oh, well,
do
thank
it.
You. Okay, so it's WOL 1450 AM every Saturday, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern time, and that's every Saturday. WOL 1450 AM Radio 1. I just want to also mention that the common symptoms when a child does have COVID, positive COVID, is fever, fatigue. Many a time you'll hear a complaint of he's just tired a lot. Headache, he's not going to tell you, or she's not going to tell you her head hurts. A cough, nasal congestion, but that also it's like a cold. So even the regular common colds, we have our eyebrow of suspicion up of is it COVID or not. So I just want to make sure that we are not too lax on this, no matter what the double vaccinations or single vaccinations, and the same group of people. That one person out of that 5 family members can bring it all into the family. So we need to also track where they are going and having the COVID testing.
But how do you treat it if you're asymptomatic or if you have mild symptoms? How do you treat it? What do you do?
Right. Well, you treat the symptoms, and that's an interesting question because some people say, well, do you throw antibiotics? Do you treat the symptoms? In other words, it's like walking hand in hand. You have a cold, or you have low oxygen. Your pulse ox is reading low 90s to the upper 80s in terms of your 80% in terms of your oxygen. So you have to do supportive care respiratory wise, and that's all ages. That would be either a vent, a respiratory support, even how you lay down, you're laying on your stomach, but also different things with headaches. Now, funny you should say that because many people grab when they have a headache, even if they're not under a doctor's care or at the hospital, they would grab ibuprofen. Please read ibuprofen, what it says, and that's your Advil, that's your Motrin, that's your Aleve, that's your Naproxen. It's the NSAIDs, it's the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. That can give you renal, that means kidney damage, and you often take it. Many people take it chronically for whatever their monthly pains, their headaches, their toothaches, etc. Please caution, please beware. And there has been reports that when you take ibuprofen, as mentioned in the different brands and the names, you also invite COVID more readily into your respiratory tract.
Wow. Dr. Deb, help me with this because as we're looking at children, I'm mindful of the fact, we've been laughing about it. We're so excited that you are about to welcome yet another generation into your family through you. Many of our parents have to work, and they have to put their children in preschool and daycare, babysitters, on and on and on, whether it's a formal setting or an informal setting. How can you protect your children and their caregivers? I mean, what do you do? I mean, is there anything that, because you're working with governmental entities just in your capacity, what do you advise people to do big picture?
Well, the good news is they're doing clinical trials testing on children right now. So we'll know whether or not we have a safe and effective vaccine for children. And you remember we got a lot of vaccines when we were kids. A lot of vaccines, and people can't imagine getting mumps or measles, most of those diseases because we effectively eradicated those diseases through vaccination. Those are just things and problems that we don't have to deal with anymore. I would envision we're going to be somewhere like that when it comes to this. My daughter specifically, as a pregnant person, pregnancy, and I didn't know this, but the immune system drops a bit in the third trimester of pregnancy. It evidently is because more of mom's blood and baby's blood start to mix in that last trimester. It's the body's way of not having mom's immune system fight off the baby. And so it's really important for her to not be unnecessarily exposed to this virus because we don't quite know the impact yet on fetuses and fetal development and things like that. We know those ACE2 receptors where this virus bonds is all throughout your whole body. We know that for a fact. So I still maintain, I think the best strategy right now is prevention. We need to keep prevention in place. And the other thing is, if people practice some of these basics, now I would expect people to be walking around for the rest of their lives wearing a mask. But if people practice better hand hygiene, and if people were more mindful about how they interacted with people, that could be transformative for just how germs and pathogens spread person to person, period. That could be a gift that keeps on giving long after COVID. And we could see dramatic drops in things like flu and other types of communicable diseases. So I think that's where we really just need to be headed. We need to be a lot more mindful and practice better prevention.
What do you do if you have to put your child in childcare? I mean, because they're getting younger and younger, Dr. Deb, and then you, Dr. Corder. I mean,
all right.
Yeah, because people have to go to work.
Oh, I understand. Our baby will not be going to daycare. We don't think kids in my family to daycare until they can talk. So we're still working that out, whether it'll be somebody comes in or a family member. But she won't be going to daycare. But when she does go to daycare, she will have all of the vaccinations that kids get before they get exposed to the other little, cute little germ mongers that are called toddlers. Oh, toddlers are great, but they slobber on everything, they kiss everything, they touch everything, they put everything in their mouth, they share everything. I was watching, it was the cutest little interaction with two little kids outside of the building. One had a lollipop and was sucking on the lollipop, dropped the lollipop on the ground. The other one picked it up off the ground and put it in her mouth. Jesus, take the wheel.
That's babies.
Before I could even get to, no, it was done. Crumbs and dirt and all and everything, just, right in their mouth. So I think we're going to have to use those same types of precautions. The other thing is, I would want to know and most of this stuff will start to be advertised. People should want to know what are the policies at that daycare. Are the staff vaccinated? We've now seen a lot of the universities have said it's a requirement. If you want to come back on campus, you will have to be vaccinated. That's a requirement. We had this requirement for school entry. Most kids couldn't go to school, and except in rare cases, and you had to have some kind of exception, and it had to be documented. You weren't able to enroll your kid in school if they weren't, vaccinated against, with all of the required childhood vaccinations. I just think COVID's about to get added to that same heat. And if it's not, then people need to ask about that before you take your child to daycare. You want to know what's the policy here.
Well, Dr. Corder, because now Dr. Fauci is talking about vaccinating children with these.
I know.
So what do you think about that? I have to tell you, that gives me cause to pause.
Well, okay. And
I support vaccines. I do.
And I do too. And that it gives me cause to pause. And I'm not comfortable. And I know that that's the recommendation. Even they're doing trials now of younger children, elementary school children. I don't know the effects down the road. As I said the other day, it's like flying the plane as we're building it. And I don't know. And because of the unknown, I I I'm not recommending it for my patients. Now they are going back to daycare, and I get calls all the time, fill out the daycare forms, etc. And I always ask each one. I say, now tell me the protocol of the school. Because there's the basic ones and there's some special ones. And I tell them, make sure that you check temperatures. They do take temperatures at the door, but even the night that the child is home, making sure that it's nothing different. Because again, you can have asymptomatic, which is no symptoms, or symptomatic. I had a family just the other day whose child had symptoms of be it allergies, be it flu, be it COVID. And I ended up, and then the parents got sick, and I ended up saying, look, everybody get checked. Because the father said, well, I've had my COVID vaccine. It's he and his wife. But the child, of course, is a toddler, had not. So I sent them to get tested. They were all negative, but they had flu.
Mm-hmm.
They had the flu.
Okay.
So it's like, so there's certain other things. And I said, because you don't want to send that child back to daycare and questionable COVID, and then weeks later or a week later, we find out that was COVID. We shouldn't have done it. So it's this extra precaution. Now, going back to the question of the vaccine, the jury's still out on that in my practice, in my mind. So, I just wouldn't want to say yes to it and then realize that was not the right decision.
What would make you feel more comfortable? Is it time? Is it? I mean, would you put one of your children or grandchildren in a trial?
Well, I'm for research. I am a vaccinating doctor. I'm also a geneticist and, pediatrician, et cetera. But, I don't want to sacrifice other people's children. Say, okay, you go and tell me how you feel, like we were seeing a year ago with the vaccines for everyone. But it's just that children, their bodies are so small and fragile. And it's just that I'm not sure, as those organs are developing, as that brain is developing, as that cardiovascular system is developing, what is it going to do in terms of function thereafter?
Dr. Deb?
So,
well, because you all both do research, and trials are really they're necessary in medicine. It's just when you start performing clinical trials on children, and I don't have any children, just nieces, nephews, and godchildren, and I love them with all of my heart. It makes me anxious. Should we be, Dr. Deb?
Well, this is Dr. Court. I know we should be.
Okay.
And pregnant women and children are the population that many trials are fearful of doing research on, but we have to. And just like they say with the pregnant women, the vaccines did not cause any more prematurity in child and the congenital and miscarriage, etc., than the normal population rate. With children, as I said, I'm not yet 16-year-olds above. Okay, that's good. They dropped it when they said, young people, but the toddlers and the children, we just need to do more research.
We got to come up with something. I've got Alan from Indiana who wants to speak with you. Alan, what's on your mind? How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for taking the call, Doctor. How about dealing with the immune systems with the young ones, and even I guess beyond the age of 7 or up until they're say 18? How can you deal with the immune systems?
Are you saying build it, or what are you asking?
Yeah, how do you build up the immune system within the body of these kids?
Uh-huh. It's interesting. Omega-3. Let me tell you. Years ago, when we were growing up, our parents gave us cod liver oil. They gave us blackstrap molasses. They gave us vitamin C. They get and of course natural things from the backyard and etc. We need to get back to that. Vitamin D. One thing. Let me also say that the American Academy of Pediatrics have finally. They said vitamin D drops years ago. We thought it was supposed to be just for elderly, with the bone, osteoporosis. But now we are recommending vitamin D once the child is 2 months old. All right, because vitamin D is a very important. We call it your super vitamin because it's almost like a natural hormone that really begins to wake up other areas of your body in terms of your immune system as well. But vitamin D, zinc, all right, as well as your omega 3s and your vitamin C. That helps your immune system. And then eating good foods. Processed foods are not good foods. They're convenient. Everything is, quick eat, microwave, etc. But let's get back to some basic cooking and food because that adds to your immune system. Your gut is the center of your immune system. People don't realize that. And then years later, they have something called leaky gut. So we need to feed the gut. You are what you eat. And the results and the consequences of what you're eating and bad food drains your body head to toe.
Did that help you, Alan?
Yes, thank you, doctor.
Okay, I mean,
my pleasure.
Well, I mean, no, thank you so much for that, Alan, because I think we're going past a lot. I mean, Mama knew best. Mama knew best. I mean, I remember that blackstrap molasses every day, and that cod liver oil. Ugh, I remember that, and I remember, you know what? When the study started coming out, this was back in the 70s, that boys were developing enlarged breasts because of chicken. My mother took us off meat for a while. I mean, she does that. She said, "We will figure this out. You'll make it." But this,
right?
And then it just was, you can't have chicken, because my father had we couldn't have beef. The window kept narrowing, and then when my baby brother and baby sister were born, they didn't eat meat for the first year, and now they don't eat meat at all, really. So it's just kind of, I think we'll have to get back to where we've been. I mean, you're right, because the old folks knew best. How can we hear you over the weekend?
Yes,
1 minute.
Saturday, 3 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. I'm on Radio 1, WOL, 1450 AM. And just listen, we talk about everything. It's Village Talk with Dr. Corder. And it's an honor to be on your show. It's an honor to be on your show today and to hopefully reach some folks that we make a difference and help them in their immediate village.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Check out Dr. Corder on the iconic WOL radio station out of D.C., everybody. Every Saturday from 3 to 4 Eastern Time, 2 to 3 Central Standard Time. You want to get some great information from her. Dr. Deb, we thought you dropped off, so we're going to let you go now. But guess what? We're sending you much love because she joins us every day on the Santita Jackson Show, giving us the best information, helping us to really empowering us. And we cannot thank you enough. Dr. Corder, for all the work that you do with our families, with our children. Blessings to you at the mighty, mighty Howard University. We're going to be talking about Senator Tim Scott and his assertions that America's no longer a racist country. What did you make of that? And Vice President Harris agreed with it. She said, look, we have a racist past, but not a racist country. What do you think about that? Back up with more of Santita Jackson in just a minute. Dr. Depp, I thought you dropped off.
I was just talking. And what happened is I started to cough, so I hit the mute button just to cough. And then I forgot to unmute. So you asked a question, I said, da. And she just jumped right in. I said, oh, man, I didn't get it again.
No, we heard.
Because I didn't know. And I said, let me fill in the gap. So it's all good.
Because you all both have backgrounds in radio. She heard the sounds of silence. And she said, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to pick this up.
Thank you for that.
We heard
my
nothing.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you. She was called cover. We heard nothing. We said, I said, well, maybe she dropped off. Okay.
Right. And look, and Dr. Deb, my middle name is Deborah, so I got you. Okay.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh, everybody.
Oh, boy.
I have to sign out, ladies.
Sending you much love.
Already.
Thank you
We have Attorney
so
Patillo.
much. Thank you. Everybody, every Saturday from 3 to 4 Eastern Time, 2 to 3 Central Standard Time. Of course, WOL, and never hesitate to promote your show on my show. It is all good.
And you know what? And I will also, one day you're going to come on my show because, I mean, you would be just such an added value. So we'll be talking about that too. Okay?
Okay, no worries. I don't know what I can add, but okay. Because I did not go to medical school, okay? Much to my mother's chagrin, okay? And my grandmother almost passed out. Oh, You're not going to med school. Yes.
It's all good. Now you doing. Let me see. You're reaching more folks than what we can with our stethoscope. But you all have a blessed weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Of course.
All
Dr.
right.
Deb, you can say hello to Attorney Patillo before you go, Mr. Mike Drop.
Good morning.
I haven't had my ride with Robert in a while. I want to go back to work just so I can have my ride with Robert in the morning.
Oh my gosh, this poor man, honey. This man. It's scary. The things that he says. Uh-huh. But I'm really glad that you're with us. Dr. Deb, thank you so much for being with us. You're just a jewel.
Yep. All right. Y'all have a great show.
Sending you much love. I'm going to call you a little bit later. All right. Okay. Thank you, sweetie. Give your family a big hug and kiss for me. Everybody, let's talk about Senator Tim Scott. Robert, we're on Facebook Live, of course. And I didn't realize that his appearance had ignited such discussion, right? I didn't realize that until I'd been called to do a couple of shows about it. And so I had to rewatch his remarks. So it's interesting. It's interesting. But I think well, no, tell me what. We're we're on Facebook Live, so
Well, I think above all else, his speech was just disappointing for so many people. So many people who were looking for kind of a third option, moderate, in the middle voice, and for them to take someone like Tim Scott and trot him out there to do the same Jesse Lee Peterson, Alan Keyes, white folks ain't racist speech. I think that's just what struck a nerve with so many people, particularly given the
We have Dwight McKee.
and just given the size of Biden's speech. Biden outlined such a big, aggressive, progressive agenda, and for Republicans to respond with such a small, middling speech, I think that's just what was so striking about it. My wife, who was in the kitchen making a strawberry shortcake while the speech was on, even she, none of it was for me. It was just for her, though. But even she was just listening in and said, "Oh no, absolutely, yeah, it's a whole conversation."
Okay.
But even she had to look over and say, like, what is this man talking about? So I think that's why it became such a firestorm.
Dwight McKee, you there? You're there?
Yeah, how you doing, Robert?
All right.
I'm well.
Okay.
Good.
This is going to be a wonderful conversation because you all are so great. I love it. And we have Kevin Gray. Okay, I think he's getting it, but that's great. I'm so glad that you all are with us on this Friday. Okay, just keep trying to get Kevin. That's great. But I've got these two. This will be interesting. Fun. So everybody call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. And let's talk about these comments because as you know, Robert, and as you know, Dr. D, Dwight McKee. Hey, I think I've come up with a little something. There you go. Dr. D, Dwight McKee. Yes. Senator Harris, excuse me, Vice President Harris, then Senator Harris, but Vice President Harris agreed with him. She said, no, we're no longer a racist country, but we have to be mindful of our history. So I thought that was it's the politics of now, but the fact is, we're still living with so much racism. I don't know how we have racism without having racists, but perhaps you all will break that down for me during this during this show. I'd like to know how that's supposed to work. Everybody like and share. Hey, Brian over there on YouTube and Linda over on YouTube. I hope you all enjoying your experience over there from the Mojave Desert out in California. Yes. Like and share. And Brian and Linda, please like and subscribe and tell other people to. Please spread the word about the show. We're only here because you have us here. Africa. How you doing, beautiful Africa? And Sheila, I love these emoji. I love them. Oh, they're fabulous. Hannah from South Carolina. Love it. Well, now you need to call in, Hannah, because he's your senator. Come on. 773-763-WCPT. Hannah, yeah, I'm calling you out, girl. Hannah Parker, South Carolinian. You have something to answer for.
Back in 30.
Woo! This is too rich. I love it. And but that's the thing about the black Republicans. They get you almost like three-quarters of the way in, and then they take a turn, and you go, oh,
15,
uh-oh, I I don't think so. But
10,
I don't know. I think this is a very interesting time. Very, very interesting. So everybody continue to
5.
call me 773-763 WCPT. Back in just a minute. Stay right here.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. Down in your soul.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Friday, April 30th, 2021, WCPT 820 in Chicago, AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. We want you to call us at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. If you want to text us, you can go to those same numbers. Thanks to GWC Injury Lawyers. If you want to watch us, that's right. Go on over to the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook and meet up with the Santita Jackson Morning Stars. And please like and share, everybody. Sheila and Hannah and Adrian and Shirley from Philadelphia and Meddy and Marnie. And Chapearl and D. Ray, Adrian, everybody, please like and share. Paula, how you doing? Like and share, and of course, we are on WCPT 820 on that Facebook page. Please, please like and share, and then you can like and subscribe on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And so let's get everybody in on the fun. We're going to be talking about Senator Tim Scott and his response to President Biden's speech and policies. He spoke for the Republican Party. What did you think about that? What did you think of his assertion that America is not a racist country? What do you think about that? Gotta hear some thoughts from you, everybody. Continue to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's get to some of these headlines as we get into this conversation. Chicago, 53 degrees and cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 61 degrees, mostly sunny. The Dow closed up 239 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 31 points. The S&P 500 closed up 28 points. And Major League Baseball, busy day today. The Twins will be playing the Royals. They will be hosting the Royals, rather. And White Sox shut out Detroit 11-0. Wow, they will be playing Cleveland today. The Cubs 9-3 over Atlanta. I knew they were going to come on back, everybody. Tonight they'll be playing the Reds, everybody. So California has recorded more than 1,400 breakthrough coronavirus cases in fully vaccinated people between January 1st and April 21st. Now, that's only 0.1% of the roughly 1.4 million cases reported in California in that period, but it is notable. Remember, you have to wash your hands, everybody. Safe hand hygiene and wearing the mask. Even when you've gotten vaccinated, you still must observe these protocols, everybody. Going to continue to talk about that and hammer the point home, because now, according to this Washington Post headline, is this: President Biden has delivered the vaccine. Now the hard part, getting people to get them. The demand for the vaccines has slowed down significantly, and yet not quite 30% of Americans have gotten the vaccine. So if we want herd immunity, 70% at least. So what do you think about that? And whether you get the vaccine or not, you must take care of your immune systems, everybody. Let's talk about, oh boy, there's so much going on, everybody. Police reform. The Justice Department is reportedly moving forward with plans to charge Derek Chauvin and the 3 other former Minneapolis police officers who participated with him in the killing of George Floyd. They will get these federal civil rights charges. And what will that mean? The reports of these possible federal indictments come a week after Chauvin was found guilty on 3 charges of murder related to Floyd's death. It means they've got to go to court again over that, everybody. Senator Sanders is vowing to fight for Medicare expansion. Now, that was left out of President Biden's American Families Plan. As great as the plan was, people still fighting for health care, equal access to equal high quality health care for all. We still do not have it, everybody, as the coronavirus is ravaging India. Wow. Senate Democrats are urging the United States pharmaceutical giants to share the vaccine tech. Many people are saying that, wait a minute, you need to share the patent so that they can develop the vaccines over there. Why aren't we doing that, everybody? As this people are calling that a crime against humanity. And guess what? America is running low on chicken, everybody. They say blame COVID 19 or the sandwich craze. Huge appetite for wings. But according to this Bloomberg report, we're running low on chicken. They're experiencing a system wide shortage. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I don't know about you, but I do love my chicken, and it's breaking my heart to know, I've gone to a couple of places and those chicken sandwiches have not been there. Oh, did I say that? Everybody, let's talk about Senator Tim Scott. He made some comments on race that ignited a fiery debate. Of course, he was chosen by the Republican National Committee, by the party, to deliver remarks. He was the person to respond to President Biden's message. Of course, Jamal Bowman, the congressman out of New York, gave the progressive response. So, what do you think about this, everybody? He said, "Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination. And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present." So, what do you think about that, everybody? Now, Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, for her portion, she said, well, America's not a racist country, but we must speak truth on racism. That's right. So, what do you think about that? I mean, she said, well, first of all, I don't think America is a racist country, but we also do have to speak the truth about the history of racism in our country and its existence today. She's not denying that this is part of the past, but is it part of the past, or is it very much a part of our present? How would you handle that? How should we handle this? And what about just the Republican response to poverty that we've yet to tackle? What about the response to this pandemic? I mean, are we still doing all that we can? I mean, we do need Medicare for all so that we can have more of a rollout. I want to know from you, what do you think about this about these assertions? Of course, we've got Dr. D, that's right, Dwight McKee, noted social scientist, and of course, a regular on this show, and of course, another regular who has his own show on WAOK. Of course, it will be on Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Standard Time, you don't want to miss it. Attorney Robert Patillo, civil rights lawyer, and the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. Let me start with you, Robert Patillo. What did you make of Senator Scott's speech? What did you make of his assertion that, hear me clearly, America is not a racist country?
Well, it's interesting because I've been historically a Tim Scott fan. I've met with Tim Scott on several occasions. I like what he's done from the Republican side of the aisle to push things like criminal justice reform, kind of shepherding through the First Step Act on that side. And many of the other things he's done with opportunity zones. Much of the agenda that Trump took credit for the Black community was actually the doing of Tim Scott. But because of that is why I was so disappointed in the speech that he gave, because what I was hoping for is that he could come out there not as a Black politician responding to the president, but as a political leader responding to an opposition policy with power, with their own policy and with their own power. And so for them to make him give the same Alan Keyes, Jesse Lee Peterson, white folks saying that bad speech was quite disappointing for somebody in the caliber of Tim Scott. And let's just put it frankly, the entire purpose of that speech was not to reach out to Black voters to come to the GOP. It was to make white voters feel more comfortable that Black people are agreeing with their talking points. This was just a situation of taking the same thing Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell would say and putting it into a Black person's mouth to comfort their white base. And that's why I think there's been such a backlash, because allowing yourself to be used as a tool for white supremacy is antithetical to the progress we've said we have been trying to make as a nation. And this concept that that we are simply are supposed to say, well, racism is in the past. And you can look at newspapers from the 1870s, and they all swear up and down America is not a racist nation. That since the Civil War is over, racism is in the past. You can look at newspapers and newsreels from the early part of the 19th century, the earlier part of the 20th century during race riots in Atlanta, race riots across the nation, and they will make the same assertions. At the same time, in the 1960s, we were putting hoses and dogs on children, trying to integrate areas. They swore up and down, we are not a racist nation. So we can either take the reality of the lived experiences of African Americans in this country, and that's what this decade-long protest movement that we colloquially call Black Lives Matter is about. And we can actually try to collate and create a policy to ameliorate racism, but you can only do that once you admit that it exists. And I don't think you can just wish it away, as many on the other side would like to. So I think the firestorm around Tim Scott was just based on the obsequious nature of his speech and the servile way that he had to kowtow to the same white racists in his party, the same people like Rick Santorum who said Native Americans have done nothing to build this nation, the same people like Lindsey Graham who said systemic racism is not a real thing because Barack Obama was elected and because Kamala Harris is the vice president. And we have to have some folks who are really willing to speak truth to power about the conditions of African Americans in this country so that we can try to regain the places, the shining city on the hill that we claim to be, and actually push for some more policies of equality. People don't like to admit that America is a racist nation because they make it feel like that means they are personally racist. More so to say that the policies of this country have always been meant to keep minorities down and to uphold white supremacy.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts? How do you respond to his assertion, hear me clearly, this is not a racist country? And, even Vice President Harris, for her portion, said it's not a racist country, but we must be mindful of the racist history.
I think Robert really covered it pretty well. It's you want to understand the nature of this country. First, look at the music. The white basic, real emotional theme song is "America the Beautiful," "Oh Beautiful Spacious Skies," "Amber Green," "Lands of Green," "Purple Majesty," "Mountains of Majesty," "Above the Feuded Plain." America, our real emotional theme song is "We Shall Overcome." Overcome what? Overcome the vestiges of white racism. Is that every week at Saturday morning, breadbasket push, we held hands, and we shall overcome. What were we trying to overcome? 400 years of oppression, of lynching, of Jim Crow, of mass murder, of genocide, of mass incarceration, bad schools, bad meat. We weren't singing "We Shall Overcome" in the abstract, because that's what our daily life was about, was trying to overcome the impact of racism. If you want to understand how the country operates, look at the heroes. When you look in the book, you just look and read the white heroes. They are folk who've been able to make a contribution to white people and to science and humanity. So it's Thomas Edison and it's Thomas Jefferson. It's Alexander Bell. People who could really concentrate on invention and productivity. For us, it's people who have, again, been able to survive. It's the Fred Douglasses who were born slaves and the Harriet Tubmans and the Jack Johnsons who won the heavyweight championship and then was put in jail. Muhammad Ali's the heavyweight champion that was stripped of his title. The Jackie Robinsons who wasn't allowed to play baseball till they were 30 almost. It's our heroes are Negro first. Is after 100 years, one black person or two black persons was able to steal their way through and become the role model and the hero for 400 years of oppression and racism. If you want to understand the country, look at the science. Every major statistics that operate within the frameworks of the social order are black people on the bottom and white people on the top. We get more diseases, we're sicker longer, we die sooner, we are poor, we work harder, we get fired faster, we get arrested sooner, we stay in jail longer. Our whole world is a world of us reacting to oppression. Black history really is a story of one existential crisis after another. And so the record is there. All you have to do is look at the record and be honest about what you're looking at.
Kevin Gray, former president of the South Carolina ACLU, the author and editor of the book Killing Trayvons, an anthology of American violence. You are South Carolinian. You live in South Carolina, of course. A Railroad Barbecue, fast becoming an iconic restaurant in Columbia, South Carolina. Talk to us. Who is Tim Scott and what did he mean?
Oh, Lord. I tell you, after listening to the other two guests, I don't even know why you're asking me to be on here. I'd rather listen to them.
Because he's your senator.
Well, he's one of these senators. It's like Malcolm X once said, because when someone said our government's in trouble, he said no government's in trouble. He is the senator. In addition to, I'm going to get to your question, but in addition to the Trayvon book, I did an anthology. I guess it's back in the early 90s called Waiting for Lightning to Strike the Fundamentals of Black Politics. And I have two essays in there. The first one is Dixie 101, which explains the history of South Carolina as it relates to the nation at large and the fact that South Carolina is and has traditionally the ideological home of white supremacy and racism in the country. And, a lot of the early slave laws, slave codes came out of South Carolina. South Carolina was the first to succeed from the Union, the Confederate flag, and the history of the Confederacy still loom large in this state. You got streets named after Confederates, buildings named after Confederates, schools named after Confederates, and it seems that the modern day Republican Party has followed that whole playbook of racism and white supremacy. Now, back to your question, Tim Scott is a South Carolinian. Politically, he says he got his inspiration to run for office from Reverend Jackson. That was one of the first campaigns he was involved in. Of course, Scott plays the whole fundamentalist Christian line and the Republican line, which is that big government is bad. I would probably put Tim Scott closer to the libertarian light branch of the party, the Republican Party. And I'm sure there are things that he says publicly that he really doesn't believe, but he plays to that constituency that where race and the underlying issues around race, which means that black people don't work as hard, don't try as hard, aren't smart as whites, unless they totally accept the ideology of whiteness and white supremacy. Now, when people talk about racism in this country, they always confuse racism, structural racism in particular, with bigotry. Bigotry is merely you don't like someone that's different than you. Structural racism and white supremacy is what the previous guest just said, is all the underlying issues that create the situation where we live shorter lives. We have a tendency to be poorer than the rest of the country. We make less wages. We live in substandard housing. We get substandard education. That is the nature of structural racism and white supremacy. Structural racism is one of the foundations of white supremacy. And of course, there's white skin privilege, which is all a part of that. So when you talk about racism in this country, it can't just be about I don't like somebody because they are black. You have to talk about
as the previous guest did, the structural foundations of racism and what it produces, and that is, for most of us, a lifetime of white supremacy where people are judging you by your skin color, and if your skin color happens to be something other than black or brown, it happens to be what people consider white or European, then of course you're going to get that break. That, you know, you're not going to get shot by the police. You're allowed to ask a question if they pull you over. You're not necessarily going to live in a community that's redlined or where you pay more or less. So that's, first of all, I think we probably need to give the country a lesson in the definitions of racism so that we're all on the same playbook. America is perhaps one of the most racist countries on the planet. I haven't been to all the countries, so I can't tell what goes on in other countries, but structural racism is tied to colonialism, it's tied to empire, it's tied to enslavement, tied to genocide, and it's tied to keeping class of people as cheap labor, and infuse the economic system in many cities and municipalities that keep them going. I've been talking lately about these traffic stops and the police, and it's not just people getting killed. It's the economic violence. It's violence that if you give somebody a ticket, the insurance rates go up. If they live in a certain community, then the insurance rates in those communities go up, which is economic redlining, which for the most part views and pays for government. So who is Tim Scott? Tim Scott is a product of what we're all a product of, a society that keeps failing to understand and recognize its past and recognize its history. I would encourage everybody to watch that. I think it's an HBO documentary, Exterminate the Brutes, by Raoul Peck, which talks about colonialism and what it wrought.
Everybody, let's talk about this. I want to hear from you. 773-763-WCPT. 773-763-9278. What did Senator Tim Scott mean? It turns out, it's almost predictable. There's some buzz about him in the early presidential primary states. And he said some things that many African Americans and many Americans would agree with. So, but on that point, and what did Vice President Harris mean? She responded, but she said, racism must not be ignored today. But many people want to put racism behind us. Is it? Call me, text me, 773-763-WCPT. I'm Santita Jackson, Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820 in Chicago, AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Back in just a couple minutes.
You and me, every day I'll find a way to help us all.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. Kevin, do you have to leave now?
I can stay for a little bit longer. Okay. I got to get my shot. I got shot this morning, yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Kevin's got Railroad Barbecue, everybody, down in Columbia, South Carolina. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, the people's attorney, she and her son went there because he's, of course, a big college football prospect. Football. Excuse me. Pardon me. And they went and ate at Railroad Barbecue on the way in.
Big old son.
Oh, well, she.
He's a big old boy.
I'm just trying to give you some pub. They were so excited. They got a care package driving back to Atlanta. She said, "Girl, I had to get it." She said, "Once I got it going in, we had to get some going back out." I said, "All right, Kevin. All right, Kev. We ain't mad. Love it."
So we need work. We need to find some workers.
Well, Kevin, I won't be convinced that you send me some.
Hey, all right now. I'm trying to figure out. how to set up mail out orders.
Hey, you just need to go on and do
mail
that.
out order kind of system.
You need to do that now.
Everybody keeps talking. We had this conversation yesterday, Santita. It is hard to find workers right now.
I know.
And as soon as we find some workers to help pull that off, we're going to be doing some other kinds of things, but it's really hard right now in the restaurant or retail business to find workers. I mean, we're swamped every day, but we got a really, really small staff, and we're trying to hire. But luckily, we've got a lot of the people that were there from the start that are still there. But it is a hard road to hoe.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Are you cooking any chicken?
Oh yeah. We don't.
I don't want all the chicken.
We don't cook chicken. We smoke chicken.
So if you cooking chicken at all, then they got the Postman or Amazon. So that's the two things you need to satisfy me. Somebody making the chicken, somebody who can bring the chicken.
We don't cook chicken. We smoke chicken.
Oh.
Cook chicken. That's like putting it in the oven, right? We don't do that. We put it in the oven, but we throw some wood and some love behind it, right?
But you know what, everybody, you need to go to his restaurant because Dwight, you will love it. It's really a civil rights museum. It's a beautiful restaurant, number one. But they have so much tremendous memorabilia. He even has my Grandma Helen's American Express card.
Which I got from your mama.
Oh.
Just to let everybody know.
Well, you cannot sell that table unless you sell it to me. Because that's my mama Helen.
Well, your mama wants that.
1 minute.
Okay.
That table.
Well,
your mama already wants that
that's
table.
fine. Okay. No, I'm just saying. Somebody's got to get it. My mama or me. That's my mama Helen. I sat at that table. I looked. I said, oh, my goodness. This is my grandmother's card. Lord.
Whew. I got to put your mama Helen up in there.
Yeah. I have some wonderful pictures of her. So,
well, they're coming down there for Jackie's event.
In North Carolina.
In North Carolina. So
30.
maybe we can work a scenario out where Sandy can bring some back with her.
Well, he's in South Carolina, Kevin. We're going to be in North Carolina. I mean, Dwight. It'll be far, far
15.
away. Oh.
Where at?
We're going to be in Greensboro.
10.
Well, that is a piece.
Trust and believe. I know that. So stay right there.
And the difference between South Carolina and North Carolina is vast. Not just with distance.
Hey.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. You got the power. Down in your soul is the power.
Oh my goodness! I thought we were going to be having these deep discussions on the Santita Jackson Show about Tim Scott, and we are still, and we're taking your phone calls at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Of course, we've got on WCPT 820 here in Chicago at AM 950 radio, my family to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Of course, you just heard the sounds of blackness, the power of hope. We're trying out these new theme songs, everybody, so let us know what you're thinking. We love it, love it, love it. Call me, text me, 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. And please go on over to Facebook, to the Santita Jackson and Friends page and WCPT 820's page. Like and share, everybody. And please like and subscribe on my new YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. Everybody like and share. We've been talking with Kevin Gray, the former president of the ACLU of South Carolina, the author of the book and the editor of Killing Trayvons, an anthology of American violence, noted social scientist, Dr. D, our own Dwight McKee, and of course, the host of his own show on WAOK, the iconic talk radio station in Atlanta, Attorney Robert Patillo, civil rights attorney, and the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. We've been talking about Tim Scott. A lot of people have a lot of comments. Let me go to Rick. Rick, what's going on?
Thanks for having me on. So a couple things. I don't want to necessarily talk about Tim Scott per se. I don't feel comfortable being a white man doing that. But I will say this, is that I find it, well, here's what I will say, Santita. I find it very interesting that if he's going to be a spokesman for the Republican Party, and the message the Republican Party is sending is that there's no racism in the United States, how curious it comes from a party that's been using racism as a part of it, not only its campaign platform since going back to the Southern strategy with Nixon, Reagan at Philadelphia, Mississippi, Willie Horton ad with Bush, Bush's son with the ads that he was, or the phone calls he was doing in South Carolina, accusing John McCain of having an illegitimate African-American daughter, that kind of thing. You know, I find that very interesting that that party is coming out with that message, but not just with campaign, but also policy. You know, we look at the war on drugs. That was all about racism. That was all about Nixon's efforts to destroy the civil rights movement. We thought was his enemies, and that continued on into the 80s with Reagan. And the disparity between, you know, the powdered cocaine sentencing and the crack cocaine sentencing. This was all about racism, and this was all Republican policies. So, you know, I find that very interesting coming from a Republican. The second thing I want to say is that, you know, I'm a teacher in the inner city, even though I do live out in the suburbs at a charter school, and a lot of my young men are from the West Side. And I can say this is that, you know, a lot of the infrastructure that we have out here in the suburbs is certainly much better than the infrastructure that they have in the neighborhoods they come from. And you're telling me that that's not racism? I mean, we could talk about certainly the effects of redlining has had on these neighborhoods. And, you know, even though there is technically no longer redlining, but this is 2021. How come in my neighborhood I have nice schools, nice parks, streets have no potholes, but I drive through their neighborhoods and we see all this disparity? You can't blame that on the people that live there, because they're not the ones that are responsible for that. That's the government. That's the people who are supposed to be taking care of these types of things. And so you can't tell me that there's no racism involved in that, because there is. So that's what I have to say about that.
So you think that he was out of line?
I think the message is out of line, and I think the message is just to distract, because that's all they have. You know, Biden comes up there. He has a great speech. He talks about a big infrastructure plan which is very popular with both Democrats and Republicans and independents. In fact, you know, Biden's been a very popular president from the get-go. Certainly, he's done a great job with the COVID vaccine rollout. And this is just another distract. And this is all they've ever used racism as a distraction, because the Republicans don't have any ideas. They haven't had ideas for a long time.
But you know what?
So other than ideas that will help. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. And number one, let me thank you for your service in teaching our children. And when I say our children, I mean children of all colors, because I think that we need to thank teachers for all that you do. But it seems to me that there is a pushback against looking at racism in America, past, present, and ongoing, right? When pressed, if he thought America was racist, President Biden said, no, I don't think the American people are racist, but I think after 400 years, African Americans have been left in a position where they are behind the 8 ball in terms of education, health, in terms of opportunity. And then, of course, President Harris said, no, I don't think America is a racist country. Let's bring him down, Paul. But we also have to speak truth about the history of racism in our country and existence today. I mean, Kevin, in addition to what Senator Scott said, is there a lot of difference? Is there a lot of daylight between what Vice President Harris, President Biden, and Senator Scott are saying?
Not really. And nobody wants to call them on it. Look, the history of structural racism and white supremacy meant that black folk were victims of state-sponsored discrimination, lack of access to capital and credit, the inability to inherit wealth, laws that were intended to keep them in a subordinate economic and social position in this country. And regardless of what they feel about it, what happened in the past affects what is going on now. And obviously what is going on now reinforces those structures that were set up to keep certain segments of the nation down, be they black, brown, and in some cases Asian. I mean, this is the nature of the foundation of this country. It goes along with the lie that Rick Santorum tried to
try to throw at people that when Europeans came to this country, there was nothing here but savages that they killed. It was the country is founded on genocide and kidnapping. Enslavement was about kidnapping, and no one even. Have you ever heard anybody get on television and make a speech standing up in front of the Congress or giving a political speech and said this is the country founded on genocide and kidnapping? No, they say this is the land of immigrants. Well, it's not that easy, and for X amount of years, the idea that this country was founded by Europeans, that we fought a civil war based on the idea, the fundamental foundation of the Confederacy, that this was a white man's country, all that matters to where we are today. And it's about the economics that whole history has played out. So unless people come to grips with that, we're never going to be the beloved community that Dr. King spoke about. It's people want to be in denial about history, then they'll never ever have a bright future.
But before I go to the call, well, let me go to some of the callers. I want Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee to react to them. George, how are you?
Good morning, Santita. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
Your most excellent guest and the previous caller have pretty much covered the area that I wanted to speak about. I'll try to boil it down to this. You can't say the United States is, quote, a racist nation, unquote, or that it's not a racist nation. It's a whole spectrum from 0 to 100. And at the 100 end, you've got stone cold racists like the slime that dragged James Byrd to death behind a pickup truck in Texas. And at the other end, you've got people who are uninvolved and see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and are not practicing any kind of overt racism, but they don't do anything active to try to ameliorate the problem. And it's the difference between sins of commission and sins of omission.
But let me ask you this, George. I guess it's like having COVID. Either you're asymptomatic or you're raging with the virus, right? And you're on a ventilator. I mean,
exactly.
COVID is COVID, and you don't want it, but you still have it, right? I mean, how can we have, racism that's been baked in the cake here and have no racist here? How does that work?
Well, that's something that I agree with. I think I was trying to express the same thing. But, we've got, I was born and raised in a white neighborhood on the South Side when I was a kid. It's a racially and ethnically mixed neighborhood now. And one of my sisters and her husband and my nephew live in my parents' old house. And my nephew has gone to school with kids of all colors and ethnic backgrounds. And all kinds of things that used to be part of the consciousness when I was a kid wouldn't even occur to him. People under the age of 30 are the ultimate hope of this country because they just don't have the same input that we were immersed in. All I can say is that you look at people that I regard as my heroes, and at this stage in my life, I don't have too many. I'm more cynical than I used to be. But Jackie Robinson, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Harold Washington, those were men with a capital M. And in my working life, I've worked with African American men who had to face obstacles 10 times more than I ever faced, and yet accomplished 10 times more than I have. I mean, if you're aware and you're honest and you try to pay attention, if you grow up in this city, you know that you're surrounded by African American people of excellence in every field, and that can't be denied. It just takes a little conscious effort to face reality, wind racism down in this country. But I think it took us 400 years to get here. I just hope it doesn't take us another 400 before there's liberty, justice, and equality for all.
George, you're making some great points. But, why don't you, Dwight, Robert, Kevin, would you like to respond to what you heard George say? Dwight?
My response would be, I just really want to respond to what you said, that we were behind the 8 ball. We're not behind the 8 ball. We are the 8 ball. Is that the game is not won until we're knocked off the table. And what America is a subtext of a lot of European tribes, European groups who came over to a new continent, and racism was their buy-in. That is how you became part of the American fabric. That's how you became an American. One of the buy-ins you had to have was the premise that white superiority and Western civilization, classical civilization, was the standard for the country. And anything short of that was an aberration and needed either redemption or nullification. And so our general venture over here is not just us surviving or us thriving. It has more to do with us surviving all of the impositions and all of the hatred and the viciousness that came with racism at our expense.
Kevin, before you go, your final thoughts? Oh, I'm sorry. I know Kevin's running.
No, go ahead. I can wait.
Okay.
That
go ahead.
Racism is behind us. It's behind us pushing. It's getting a head start. It's behind us holding our back, holding our shirt, holding our pants leg, kicking us in our pants. Or the press, whatever. It's behind us, all right. I'm not going to go any farther with those metaphors.
Thank you. That's
it's certainly behind us.
Let me go to Mama D. Mama D, what's on your mind today?
Oh, well, hallelujah. Greetings. Racism and slavery is not the same. Reverend Dr. Prophet King says, we've got to get the language straight. Most people do not know the difference between racism and prejudice. To be racist, you have to have control and power over systems, banking, political, education, justice, all the institutions of power. Otherwise, you're just being prejudiced. The problem is Americans are in denial due to white people's guilt and black people's shame. They're desperate to be just like everybody else, and we won't call it crimes against humanity and Jim Crow genocide, even though if you want to know if it's racism now, all you have to do is say the Dred Scott decision said to keep that blacks have no right. He specified a color. The Brown versus Board of Education decision said it existed to keep the status of the Negro down. Again, it specified a race and a color. So our problem is, you can see it in our vice president. She said, you don't think I'm going to do something just for black people, do you? But she didn't feel that way when it came to all the other groups that got specialized laws passed, like the Asians within weeks. They have got laws passed specifying them racially as Asians, and yet it's been over 30 years, and we can't even get a commission to study the problem that America has already admitted. So we've got to come out of denial to deal with it. So what did you think is the real hanger-on of why we can't admit crimes against humanity and Jim Crow genocide? What do you think the real reason is?
Thank you, Mama D. Everybody, your final thoughts about that?
Let me. Can I give a friendly amendment on Mama D's?
Sure.
Definitional lesson. I think the best word is bigotry as opposed to prejudice, because
prejudice, prejudice is a legal term. I mean, there's with and without prejudice, which means with or without opinion. But bigotry means that you believe that you are better than someone because of your race. Now, as she said about racism and the power dynamics for structural racism, she's absolutely right. Structural racism involves power. You have structures of power that keep people locked into subordinate positions that make them predisposed to be victims of police violence or all the other stuff that some of the guests have mentioned earlier. So that's why I use the term. I mean, I don't use the word discriminate as opposed to bigotry or prejudice, because some people have quote unquote discriminating taste. But the word bigotry for me has racial and ethnic implications that coincide with a discussion about structural racism, white supremacy, and the power dynamic involved.
But why
that
do you
makes
think?
any sense?
Well, no, it does make sense. But what I'm trying to make sense of is everyone wants to do a hard pivot away from racism, not from race. Race is not the problem. Racism is the problem. Robert Patillo, you have Vice President Harris, President Biden, and Tim Scott, who start with the assertion that America is not a racist country. What do you make of that? Then they go off in different directions.
It's part of the American denial. It's part of the truth, justice, and the American way. You know, imagine if the Nazis had won World War II, how they would teach World War II right now. They wouldn't say, well, we were evil and we happened to win. They would say we were right the whole time and we were able to overcome all the enemies who were against us. History is by its very name revisionist. It's written by the victors. But sometimes you just have to use Occam's razor on issues like this. You taking the current conditions of African Americans in this country. If you look at the disparity in wealth, the disparity in health, the disparity in education, the disparity in police shootings, disparity in prison populations that exist right now. If the answer is not racism, what is the only other answer? The only other answer is that the Negro in this country is defective and that he is somehow a lesser version of humanity than every other group. And this is what they mean when they say America isn't a racist nation. They're trying to reinforce this idea, and the brains of black folks in this country, and of people in this country in general, and you hear it often where they say, well, why can't black folks get right? Well, why are our neighborhoods like this? Why is this, that, and the other going on? Because they want to convince us that the problem is us and not the actual systems that keep us in those conditions. So once you eliminate racism as a problem, you put into the mind of black folks that they cannot do better, they cannot create better because they are defective by their very nature, which is the only place logic can take you. Well, then you create a self-fulfilling prophecy of people who believe they are less, who act like they are less, and therefore they don't pick up the trash in their communities. They don't care nothing about robbing other people because they've already been taught their entire lives that they can't get right genetically, that they have no history, as Rick Santorum said, of the native people, that they had no art, no medicine, no science, no names, no religion, no anything along those lines. And this is what we mean by upholding white supremacy, because if you are one saying that racism is not the reason for the condition of the Negro, then that means that the Negro is inferior. Then the Negro has to be inferior. Then who is he inferior to? Well, he's inferior to, of course, the Greeks, Alexander the Great. He's inferior to Caesar and the Romans. He's inferior to the Anglo-Saxons and to the royalty of Europe. He's inferior to whiteness. This is what we mean when we say we're uplifting and upholding white supremacy. So even the people who are theoretically our friends and on our side are still in the position of trying to uphold a white supremacist system, because the actual answer being that we hold you down to make you stay down is far too much for America to accept at any point in time. But that's the conversation we actually need to be having.
Kevin Gray.
And throw in there the term American exceptionalism, manifest destiny, or frontierism that tie all into it. Of course, a country that's exceptional can't be racist, and we know that's not true. And the idea of manifest destiny and frontierism, as though that didn't involve kidnapping and genocide. That's what it involved. Frontierism, where you got out there in your wagon with your gun and your wife and your kids and your one cow, and you killed everything around you, and you took the land, and you used the government to do it.
I've got about a minute and a half, Dwight McKee. What say you about all this?
Well, for the record, you all, the now just don't start about us and the Indians. Is that when you study European history, when you study history in your high schools and your grammar schools, they take a area of the population, the European population, starting with from the fall of the Roman Empire in about 500 AD, all the way to about the 14th century. And what they say when you read the book is they say it was Greece, it was Rome, and then it was the Dark Ages. And there was the Dark Ages, and then it was the Renaissance. And about 1,000 years is covered in about 2 paragraphs where there is no discussion of European barbarity. There is no discussion of European plunder. They just go from Rome to ups, the Dark Ages. We can't talk about that. To, then there was a Renaissance, and the Italians started painting great pictures and making great sculptures. That denial exists all the way through the profiles of European history, because their self-concept, their self-esteem is wrapped up in the mythology. Because you're actually saying 2 things, guys. One, you're talking about the innate inferiority of blacks. That's why we haven't made it. But it also justifies the success, quote unquote, of whites. Is they made it because they're so exceptional, they're so superior, they're so gifted and so blessed that you then confuse plunder with blessings. You confuse genocide with God's preordination for you to steal a nation. You confuse slavery with the right to exploit other people's labor and talent as the benefits of God preordaining you to be in charge of the planet. And so the absence of the denial of racism really works
30.
Well, I mean,
for these white people. The old folks say everybody want to go to heaven, but don't nobody want to die. They don't want to.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They want to.
Absolutely. Well, I got a heart out here. But you're right. And but you got to think about it. You have people now who want to block out the sun. It's a thinking, everybody. That's really unhealthy. It hurts us all. Think about that this weekend. Think about it. Think about it. All part of this American project, this human experience. I'm Santita Jackson. I'll see you on Sunday on People for Life with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Or I'll see you on Monday on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you, Kevin Gray, Dr. D. Dwight McKee, and, of course, Robert Patillo, who's on WAOK on Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. And, of course, get Kevin Gray's book, Killing Trayvons, an anthology of American violence. Everybody, I love you. And, of course, Dr. Marilyn Porter on WOL. Tomorrow, she will answer your questions. I love you, Dr. Deb. Everybody, see you tomorrow. Or Sunday on the Book Live, and Monday here on People Okay, you guys. You all want to say anything on Facebook Live before we go?
Yeah, send me my barbecue. I'm gonna give Santa my address.
Look, he is on the beg on some food. Chappelle made him some food, and I know it was good, wasn't it?
Very. You always. This was a really great show today, I thought.
Oh, I'm so glad that you thought so. I'm glad. I mean, I thought it was. This was actually Chappelle's idea because she said, no, people are talking about Tim Scott. She said, I think you need to get a little piece of this. I said, oh, okay. Well, it wasn't anything I was really going to pay attention to, because everybody has an opinion. And And then when I heard that, the president and the vice president, started with, well, racism, no, that's not what we've got going here. I said, well, look, everybody's getting a piece of this. And it seems that everybody's trying to run away from this. And so I had to, I just felt that it was you know, time to have a think about it. What do you all think before we go? I mean, because everybody wants to push racism and all of this off to the side. Will it work? Robert, you still there? Dwight, you still there? Kevin, anyone still there?
Wait, no, Robert.
I think Robert might have gone. But Dwight, your take on this before we go?
Is well again. I always wonder whether this crowd really believes what they act like they believe, or they're just being politically expedient because they're trying to further their careers. It's very hard for me to believe that an intelligent man who's awake and conscious and sober can look at society and come to the conclusion it's not racist, particularly as he done spent his life ducking racism. And so I always think that a lot of this is not their real belief, is they say what they think they need to say in order to be promoted in whatever political or economic direction they're trying to go in. I mean, it would be very hard to me for the vice president to speak on racism in America and not deal with the caste system and the class system in India, where her family is from. Does she not deny that too? Or, South African apartheid, who was reinforced by the Indians. Gandhi started in India before he started in South Africa.
Yeah, and he was high.
I mean, so I wonder.
He was highborn and was insulted when the wife in India, in South Africa, made him move to the black part of the train. That's what his thinking had to completely shift, right?
That's why he was insulted, because he was a Brahmin, not Daniel. It was all right for the untouchables to have to sit there, but he was a Brahmin. Why would he have to sit there? And so I wonder how much is expediency and how much is real, and how much they really believe what they say. Which is why I don't really react to it, because I'm not convinced that these guys are convinced of that. In fact, I'm more convinced that because they understand, they know what mine feels not to step on, given where they're trying to go.
Wow. Does that help us as a country? Does it help black people? Does it help everybody? Does it help or does it hinder?
It depends on what your motives are. It helps them, career-wise, but it only helps us if they use that in behalf of these oppressed people and being able to champion their cause. And so Tim Scott is in a unique position to negotiate this criminal justice, these criminal justice laws. And if he's just trying to position himself so he has more leverage and more power to get those laws passed, then it helps us. But if his goal is just to sell us out so that he could have maintained his own lifestyle, then no, it does not help us.
Unbelievable. Well, we're going to see, because I think that there are more Tim Scotts out there. That is to say, there are more black Republicans who are going to get more and who are going to get higher profiles. And I think it's important for us to, I think we need to be mindful of this time in which we find ourselves, because we've not been here before. Dwight McKee, this is a very interesting time. Very interesting time.
I think a more creative discussion is for us to discuss what is the need in white people to believe this about themselves. Why are they so insecure that they have to live in this non-reality of, God being white and the American way and American flag and truth and justice and Superman? What is about their psyche that makes them so weak and vulnerable and insecure They have to, one, lord over other people, and second, deny their own sin and own sense of injustice. That to me is a more profound discussion.
Oh, Robert, I didn't realize you were still there.
Dwight, I'm still sticking around, but Dwight, I think the reason is that the minute that you put one chip, the one chink in the glass, the armor of white supremacy, the entire system falls apart. You can no longer justify the last 1,000 years of world history once you take away and break down this concept of white supremacy. It's easy to justify what you did in Africa when you're saying, well, I was trying to civilize a brutal and uneducated people and just happened to liberate them with their gold and diamonds and oil and rubber and people there in the same time. But once you say, no, we were just evil, we were the bad guys. This is why I made that Nazi analogy. Because if the Nazis had won World War II and were teaching it right now in their public schools, they would not admit that they were the bad guys. They would not mention the Holocaust. They wouldn't mention the extermination of people. They wouldn't mention Kristallnacht. It's only because they lost that these things are part of history. So it's the same thing with this method of white supremacy, where they are in a position where if now they start admitting to what happened, well, now you open up the conversation on reparations. Now you open up the conversation on colonialism. Now you open up the conversation of, well, maybe we do have to give some of these exhibits back in these museums and some of these diamonds back, or if you look in the crown jewels of the Queen of England, and you see all these stones and precious jewels of Africa in them. Now we start having to have that conversation. So we can't let that fall apart because that's all they have left at this point. And the minute that breaks down, then the entire system of Western civilization starts to fall apart around them.
Dwight McKee?
He hit it out the park. And I guess that's why they have to also exclude us from certain things, to maintain, that illusion of domination. And so they have to keep us out of golf.
Well,
and keep us out of tennis.
And we have to figure out whether we want to be a part of it or not, because many of us want to be in. We really, really, really do. And we want to brown up.
Well, what happens is
we don't want to end it. We don't want to end slavery. We just want to get out the fields. It's a bad thing.
Well, what happens is when we get in, we dominate, and then that knocks down the illusion and the mythology. And so as long as they could lock us out of golf, they could have the superior attitude. Sure. But then when Tiger gets in and breaks all of the barriers, they have to redefine all the notions of the game. The Serena sisters, after they beat everybody who's beatable, they have to redefine the whole nature of the game. And so I guess a lot of the segregation is based on them trying to maintain, keeping us out of the mix so they can maintain the illusion of superiority because you take the competition out of the game.
Well, I think you're right, but I'm speaking to something else. I'm speaking to another need that we have to be in, to brown up imperialism, not to end slavery, but to get out the fields. And that's what I'm seeing with us when we capitulate, when we get in, when we become the first or the only, or when we get in, we don't change things. But I guess they don't let you into their house to change it. They let you in their house to be a guest. And, I just think that there's some fundamental questions I think that we're going to have to ask and answer about where it is that we really, really want to be, or where it is that we should be.
Well, to me, it's a little bit like that scene in The Matrix, where you had the guy who was there on the Nebuchadnezzar with Neo and Lawrence Fishburne and them, and then he decided to go back and hop back into the Matrix because he would rather live a good life inside of the Matrix than a bad life in freedom. And that's how many of us are. That's why that Tim Scott speech struck many people so negatively, because he was literally making the Faustian bargain that I would rather have a good life inside of this GOP party. I can be a candidate for president in 2024, if not a high cabinet position or vice president, something along those lines. I can move the ball along by capitulating and being part of their system and simply parroting what they said instead of standing up and speaking truth to power. I think that's why this became such a viral
sensation and made so many people so angry, because fundamentally, as a black man, when you stand up and say that there's no racism in this country, you're saying that the conditions of black folks in this nation is because they are genetically, socially, intellectually, and spiritually inferior to white folks. And that is the reason they're in the conditions they are now. And if you simply allow white people to dominate you again, they will be able to raise you out of this position and this conditioning. And I think that is the sickest part of the entire conversation, because when you allow yourself to be a pawn in upholding their system, well, then now you are worse than complicit. You are that attack dog. You are that hound. You are the person in charge of. There's one thing to be enslaved with somebody else. There's another thing to be in charge of going to chase them down and bring them back to the plantation. And I think that's why many people have been so struck by those comments, because we just didn't expect it coming from Tim Scott. Well, if that's the logic, if that's the goal, then that's the right strategy. You can't fault him for the strategy, because the Uncle Tom class has always gotten more rewards than the rebellious class. All we ever got was beaten and hung. I mean, it ain't been no real great benefit other than your dignity to be stand up for righteousness.
Well, I guess.
And they've always gotten rewarded and gotten the big piece of the chicken.
Well,
and so,
let's say they've gotten the earthly rewards, but the people who've lived in history and who've been revered are the Frederick Douglasses, right? Are the Harriet Tubmans, are those who would not capitulate, those who would not give in. Dr. King. I mean, those are the people who have been slaughtered by the world, but they're revered.
Yeah, but you got to be a martyr to get there.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. But, I'd rather be a martyr than be married to this mess, because this is not right. What we have been taught, Dwight McKee and Robert Patillo, that this earthly life is brief. It is brief. It is brief.
Well, you're making some assumptions, Santita, and one that dignity is as important to anybody as it is to everybody.
Oh, no. I'm talking about
dignity.
Me. I'm only talking about me.
Oh.
And I'm talking about those people I mentioned. No. Some other people don't mind getting in that room and getting clowned. I do. I don't like being clowned. And I don't want to be in a place where I know my grandmama and my grandmothers and great grandmother. And wait a minute, I got to answer to you when I come home, when I leave that room. I got to answer to my parents, my brothers, my sister. What? They would look at me and say, wait a minute, you mean you let them do that to you? Are you serious? Oh, no. And see, that's what happens when they pluck people who are no longer accountable to anyone, then it can happen. But when you're accountable to your community, it's a different thing. It's a whole different deal. When you have someone that you got to come home to, someone to whom you're answerable. All those people I've mentioned are connected to the community. They're people to whom they are they have people to whom they are answerable.
Well, I would venture to say that Thomism is probably as generational as liberation is. And if you go back 4 or 5 generations, you will find the great, great, great granddaddy of this crowd tap dancing and playing the banjo then. I think some of this is inherited.
Yes. So you got to have him on your show so you can get put off the air. Go on, Robert Patillo.
Of course, always welcome.
Oh, you all are too much, but I love it. Just you're not right. So, but thank everybody. Daryl, you said this is a very great show. Tim Scott is blacker than I am in skin color and standing before the Americans saying there is no racism. We don't need financial help from the government, and talking against Biden's rescue and infrastructure plan. It will benefit both Democrats and Republicans. You're right. You don't agree with Biden, give back your $1,400 stimulus check or the $2,000 that Trump was trying to give you. Ow, he sent you. Don't continue to complain about the fact that there are no jobs created for average Americans who work with their hands. You know what? The thing is, I hear you, Daryl. We got a lot of fixing to do because we got a lot of challenges in the system. I just think we got a lot going on. But I want to I want to hand the mic over to Dwight and Robert before we go. Robert, what's your final thought?
I think the final thought is, as I say, you have to be cognizant of exactly the forces that are in play. Think about the programming that they are giving you. When they tell you that it's not racism, what other answer could there be to the condition that the people are currently in? Is it that you're just simply morally deficient, culturally deficient, educationally deficient, or just genetically deficient? And this is how they uphold the edifices of white supremacy. You have to break them down, and that can only be done by speaking truth to power. And don't get fooled by COINTELPRO, or as White would say, tap dancing and playing banjo to make other people feel better.
Dwight McKee. All banjo
Patillo, as usual,
pickers.
said it all.
All banjo pickers should be insulted to go on. Go on.
Patillo, as usual, said it all. We're closing that with that.
Put down your guitars, everybody. Not the instrument you want to play. Oh, I love you, everybody. If you want to see the podcast or hear the podcast of the show, go to WCPT820.com/Santita. Until Monday on this show and until Sunday on Keep Hope Alive, I'm Santita Jackson. And of course, check out Robert Patillo on his show on WAOK, everybody. Every Sunday from 1 to 4, you can get much more of this because he's not a wingman. He is truly hilarious. A nut. You don't want to miss it. It's fabulous, fabulous radio. You're going to get a lot of great information. And of course, we're still waiting on Dr. D's books, plural, because he's got a whole lot to share, a lot of information. We just love you. Love you, Dwight. Love you, Robert. Thank you, Paul, for a wonderful show. Everybody, I love you. Have a great day. Enjoy. And thank you so much for being part of this day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you. God bless.